Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce Brenda Clews, and let me just put her video in the chat here. And Brenda, it's your turn. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, so hi everyone, welcome. It's lovely to have this beautiful group here. I'm Brenda Clews, and I'm going first because we're in alphabetical order. I've selected 6 poems written in the last year, and I'm going to open with a video of a poetry reading that I did at one of my Minstrels and Bards events for an online art show called Opening to the Muse. And it's about Virginia Woolf, and what better muse could we start with? So I prepared this last year, and I'm going to kick off this afternoon's readings on the theme of joy, joy from Long Dash Poets. And I just throw this out. What is joy? I think for me, in poetry, it's beauty. This is called Unwindings. And it's a quote, I was reading Mrs. Dalloway and just really blissing out at the stylist Virginia Woolf was. And I came across a sentence that just didn't leave me alone. And like I would every day, anyway, I'll read it. Wrapped in the soft mesh of the gray-blue morning air, which, as the day wore on, would unwind them. It's Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway. Below the present, words slip pale, an underground rumble, one ear listening to the static of the other, wrapped in the soft mesh of blue air. A burnished boat beneath the red sun's sail holds high the staff of the sky, meshing, wrapping the soft blue air. A layer sifts softly, the nape a gentle curve gestures the body, light, the world drifts through the mind, adrift. Soft meshes of mineral cobalt sheen. Rhythms cadence the voices rippling the body. Turquoise waves stroke the skin, coming from nowhere, going nowhere. The air of the gray-blue hours unwinds. While the surface changes, beneath stays still. Because the underlying remains constant, the surface a mirage of changes that never happen. When the roots shift, in the upper facades, rebellion. Wrapped in the blue air, soft, soft. Okay, so thank you. Let me just get my text here. So the title of the next poem, Daylighting, refers to the uncovering of hidden, buried, and obstructed waterways in cities, and resonates with what is maybe a more archetypal process of the archaeology of tectonic plates. It dissolves sonically towards the end of the poem, Daylighting. Incessant streams, dreamings, quiet run under earth, city, continent, sweet tricklings of subterranean life, underside cities, dust of earlier living, folded aeons, churned into Earth's waters in lightless, crusted pockets of air. Braided centuries weave us in, churn us out, heaving tectonic plates, crushing, burying, reveal, slow dance of creation, decreation, jagged, stuttering, rise in fa, oh, ing, buckle, ing, burst, ing, bloom, ing, their crumple, ing, folds, dissolving. And here's another kind of ecstatic dance, not of the eons of time and Earth's geology, but of language, writing poetry. It's an impressionist poem. It's called Filigree. Filigree, spun silk, raw edges echo, cadences, breath of vision. Feelings laced and clustered, voices, strands, contrary winds, spill waves. The sand dissolved, self-consciously stylistic. Ocean of language, play with grammars. Tessitura sings wide, vessels and opacities, a lamp's turning shadow. And moving along for something joyful, a dance with angels. Glimmer. A day of angels outside the window, plumes of light, radiant, manifold. Come in, come in. Can I embrace you and me? I am small, frail, schismed, imperfections like cracks through my continuum. How can this multitude be? I undeserving. Angels congregate at the window. Angels spiral, magnificent plumes of light, gentle, strong, gold love, porous joy without flash or theater. Dance among dancing prisms. Oh. And the next piece is the video poem in progress. It's a rough cut edit, really rough. But the poem, outfit, and swaying dance are integral to each other. So I'm going to read while playing a video of a performance I did last Halloween, where you can see the costume to make the reading more interesting and add a visual element. The mask is a weaving of ribbons and pearls that I originally made to wear at a Dead Poets Society event just before the pandemic, where I read a few of Gerald Manley Hopkins' sprung rhyme nature poems. I can wear glasses under this mask. It's so great. As I considered through the lockdown years what to wear with the mask, collecting this image and that bit of fabric, I finally found inspiration in Schiaparelli and Dior haute couture fashion. The poem, written almost in a reverie, came last. So, just have to grab this. Nope, that's the wrong one. Okay, here we are. The costume assemblage is a riot of flowers. Stems are anchored in a corset with silk flowers radiating over my chest, around my face. A goddess of spring was what came to mind when I was composing the poem. This image of the feminine is shaken by the real woman within the projection. The poem implores us to go into actual, living, pulsing nature and breathe in beauty and fertility. And in our world of escalating pollution, to invoke our inner wild gardens, to beam our visions out as we recreate a world hospitable to all life. unfurl flowerings. Imagine unfurling from earth in spring, a flower opening. Flora, Chloris, Cordelia, a lush panoply, goddesses of flowers. My visor of green ribbons and pearls, bouquet blossoming from corset, twirling hoop skirt, sunflowers for Ukraine, poppies from Afghanistan, daisies, dahlias, hydrangeas, peonies white as vernix. Floating darkly on a seashell, zephyr winds wind. Venus in florals, a Rembrandt posy, corsage blooming from breath, sensuality of a Fragonard painting budding over nape. It's me in silk stockings and long black fishnet gloves, and I am no goddess. But am I arrayed for my sweet love's memories, wound in greening dreams? Aging Bella in dress-up, rung with ivy, dropping petals as I go. Oh, imagine walking inflorescent woodland trails. A flower is an orgasm. Breathe in gardens, meadows, let scent suffuse, apotheosize flora and fauna, color and fragrance. Encroaching floods, wildfires, drought, heat waves, plants and animals dying, glacier waters rising, a rising ocean of plastic flowers. In your wild inner gardens. In your wild inner gardens, dance! Millions of multifloral antennae beaming the world, bees humming. And I'll finish with one short poem. So I wrote here after such an intensity of imagery. I'm going to close with a little nautical twilight poem. Twilight's edge. Light's scrim, translucent as a pale petal, twisting grace. The hour before dawn, a thin silk kimono, whose heart the unseen sun. Thank you very much. Mute. And next, I'd like to introduce Clara Blackwood.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it's wonderful to be part of this annual event that we do. Every Poetry Month in April. Can everyone hear me okay? If you can. Okay, good. Thank you. So it's wonderful to be part of this again with the Long Dash group. And I have to admit that the theme of joy was a little bit challenging for me, but I did find poems on this theme. And the first poem I chose for me definitely answered this theme immediately because it deals with the healing practice of Reiki. And I know some people here are definitely familiar with that. And Reiki is a very powerful form of energy healing, and it's definitely a way to feel joyful. I highly recommend it. if you want to feel lighter and more joyful. So this is on this poem is about Reiki, and it's called Shoden. And I should also say Shoden is Japanese for first teachings, and it refers to the first degree in the modern Reiki system. Shoden. Reiki changed and awakened me, brought about a subtle cleansing. Old hurts softened in the belly. Grimy street corners became beautiful, all over like someone had washed the world. Hands abuzz, I soothed a hissing cat to sleep, grounded myself in blissful rest. A purple iris bloomed outside the city. And next I'll move to an occasion that is definitely an occasion of joy. What could be more joyous than a wedding? So this poem is called Rain on Their Wedding Day, Point Pelee, Ontario. Earlier in the day, we discovered the most passive of summer climates, calm within the humid continental. I went off looking for Jurassic wasps, heard rumor of fist-sized hornets. We speak of reaching the boardwalk before the ceremonies begin, but there is no time. Our ride coaxes us in. Before sunset, we arrive on the beach, joining the swell of celebrants. Down the sand walk bride and bride. As vows are exchanged, the sky shifts pink to purple. Storm clouds sail in, the wind ascending. As if on cue, the rain waits until the registry is signed. We hurry back to our cars for shelter, catching quick sight of carp jumping to the surface of the lake, excited perhaps by the falling rain and the ebullient couple. Then the deluge, but not until we're back at the hotel. What luck, all of Essex County providing a light show, cyclonic skies, plum and ultramarine illuminated by domino lightning. We break into spontaneous applause, thanking the weather gods for this most spectacular gift. And next I'll move to a poem that doesn't start in joy, but gets there. It starts more at a point of crisis, and yeah, moves into something else, which I think we could call joy as well. This is titled Reprieve, Bermuda, April 2018. I am in need of radical change, of vocation, residence, body, religion too. Before departure, I read how people with PTSD often lose or find their faith, switch from the left-hand path to the right. I am waiting, strange red balloon ascending into tentative sky. There are aliens everywhere. After a rainstorm, tree frogs beep and blip in the indivisible green. A yellow-crowned night heron visits every breakfast. Like a typical fixed sign, my concrete heels believe I am landlocked until hurricane season. Obstinate ox, demanding lion, tricky arachnid circle me. I dream in texture now. The rippling blue horizon vanishes through coral reefs. A silky parrotfish flashes turquoise in the undulating lagoon. Dry-tongued, I wake to saltwater taste. No dark spirits have followed me here. And for my reading, I will conclude with a poem that is a love poem, as I think that love and joy are closely tied. And it is a love poem for a creature, and it's called Love Poem for Blue. Royalty in a tiny frame, she slinks through hallways, hidden closets, the iris of my eye, magnifying space, adding glamour, grandeur, turning everything royal blue. Priests in old Siam kept them in their temples, spirit guardians chosen to house the souls of nobility, living out their lives in pampered luxury. They have not forgotten this legacy. Rest as though in prayer, expect the highest pedigree of care. And as my blue-eyed cat wraps her tail around my wrist like a sacred bracelet, I wonder, will she protect me in the afterlife? Thanks for listening, everyone. Next, I will introduce Elana in a video presentation.
Hello. So I'll be reading 3 poems, 3 exuberant pieces. And the first piece is a tree poem, Spruce. Spruce, your fruit-like decorations, trunk, a post of information, ring, hard, bark, hush. I turn and touch your husk and stroke, your husk and stroke, your pins and needles tingle. I'm no more than your dark sap spruce, a branch, no more than whorls, the ghosting wind around your boughs that bow, no more than the crusted snow on your numbed berm, falling flakes that form on specks of dust. No more than cones in the human eye perceive more shades of green than any other color, spruce. Could you know? I touch my tongue to you, taste your texture, pen and whet these letters. I'm word for you, spruce, needle for leaf, cone for fruit, templated, redolent, border blue through. Okay, and the second piece is a personhood poem, Knocking the Next. We rise to shining life, then turn, lungs to earth, liver to river, kidneys to constellations, heart of the recent being knocking the next. I am for the dark wood, for the slick, invincible mountain. I am for the noble gases, buck-tooth moon, and lithium salts, atropine, adrenaline, cardiac defibrillation, empty meadow fossil, and its calm. I lay my head to enter sleep and murmur to a maker, unknowable, yet knowing. You want a cat to have a tail, but some are born without. Expect 4 limbs on a human person. Some are only core. I stand within the timber of that one essentially trunk, thankful for my gravity and ballast. And the third piece, my last piece, a garden poem comprising short vignettes, 6 short vignettes that riff on the color yellow. Garden yellows. Begonia, you came back from brown. I had the happy hunch to plant you southwest by the door. Potentilla, star face kisses fallen to the garden arts. They'll never call you kebab. Daisy eyes, I see my wiles reflected in your pithy discs. Whatever the next shenanigan, I know, you know, I'll fill it. The plastic tab on the foxglove stalk, a sale tag on a tall girl's vintage dress. Time to cut it off. The tag, that is, not the stalk. Fire hydrant, overshiny, mars the yard, yet guards the stealthy water nymphs that dwell in ducts and culverts under the lot. How it loves that preternatural stuff. The mulberry leaf that's landed on the flagstone by the lilac. It's yellowed since the blue of green is out. Thank you, and happy National Poetry Month.
Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce someone I've known all my life, and that's me. We forgot to put the little, turnover in Alana's thing. I'm going to read 4 not too long poems about things I find joy in. I think joy is a challenging topic for a poetry reading because to me it's often mixed with other feelings. You can feel joyous and also feel something else at the same time. The first one has not been substituted, has not been processed through the writing group, so it's not approved. So I can't blame anyone else in the long dash for this poem. It's called Epiphany. Odysseus sailed his clever brain, outguessing the one-eyed giant, wooing Circe, sorceress, who made his men swine, contending with choleric gods across the dark wine sea. Not until he won home did he finally see his Penelope, his Penelope was the ocean, tides, gales, heaving froth. Over her depths, his stratagems wove and tore. In her profound silence, the sirens sang. The second one is about a different set of things that give someone joy. And this is based on a news item I ran across, and I'll just read you a summary of the news item. An Oklahoma man was arrested last month after police say a routine traffic stop turned up a gun, a rattlesnake, an open bottle of whiskey, and a rod of radioactive uranium. This is called Nocturne. There's nothing like driving as starlight pours through the sky's colander. The tires rumble and hiss back to the rattlers softly shaking, to the dim light of my uranium rod, the burn from whiskey down my throat. Got my gun and a big SUV. Life's better when I'm on the edge. Plates expired, still driving, still glowing, radiating. And the next one is kind of a puzzle poem. I've long ago read a book about poets from the Welsh and Celtic tradition and the idea of the sort of puzzle poem where you take on a persona in the poem and let the readers guess who you are. Like, you know, I am the something leaping over the stream, right? So I thought of one of the things that gives me joy is living in the beaches where we have a waterfront, a lot of ravines. We get a lot of wild animals around. I've seen foxes, mink, all kinds of water birds, even deer get down here occasionally. So I wrote this, and you can guess from each stanza which wild animal I might be talking about. It's called Mystery City Beasts. I slink a luxury bolt before you can think. A duckling is dinner, a fat carp, sashimi. I am the urban weasel, masked before the pandemic, a comic bandit hamburglar. Your seconds, my glorious repast. Your leavings make my heaven. Wolf on a diet, fox on steroids. I sing at the moon, devour plump pets. Soaring, working thermals, feathers extended like pianist's digits. Not for me, woods or wetlands. Busy streets are enough. I am hat rack, grace of a colt, the trembling rush that leaps over city hedges. So there you go, 5 animals. And the last one of my joys, given where I live, is when the weather gets reasonable. And I've already been out once this year. I take my little blue kayak out and paddle along the shore of Lake Ontario where I live. So this one is called In My Small Blue Kayak. Skin, an envelope of fluent missives, my body an armature holding water. Above schooling fish, I am alien, dipping my flat black blades, left, right, left, seeding showers of bubbles, churning thoughts. We dry up on stage, go with the flow, freeze on the spot, avoid the vortex. Ocean salts are sweat, blood, tears. I babble, emit bubbles of speech or not. Light arrives as waves, leaves as punctuation. I will return my water, every drop accounted for. As I scrape ashore, geese regard me. They know all this, saying, go down to the river, swim out to the estuary. Thank you. That's it for my little contribution to this wonderful afternoon in progress. So we are going to take a 5-minute break. You can imagine anything you want to do in 5 minutes, and then please do return for the wonderful Kath MacLean, who is our next reader. I'm going to pause the video, so we will start it again when we're all back.
Then I will start. Good afternoon. And I promised a debut of my new fashion accessory. And here it is. So thank you, John. Thank you, Brenda, for all of this. And thank you, everyone who has read before me. Fabulous stuff. And thank you, everybody, for coming out today and listening to us so graciously. So before I start my reading, I wanted to say a few things about joy, our sense of joy. At first, like the rest of us, I was a little hesitant to talk about this topic. But lately, I've been reading and rediscovering the American poet, Mary Oliver, who I'm quite ashamed to say that I wasn't terribly keen on before. I think perhaps because I was too much city, always in a hurry, squeezing as much as I could from life as if I were perpetually thirsty. Somewhere along the line, however, I'd forgotten that real joy can only be discovered and enjoyed slowly. It has to be observed, absorbed, felt, and afterwards remembered. And as I get older, and let's face it, we are all getting older, I realize joy is always found, isn't necessarily found in life's big events, but in the little ones, the everyday, the mundane, those moments that we sometimes take for granted. As Mary Oliver so elegantly puts it in her poem, Mindful, from Why I Wake Early, 2004, she says, every day I see or I hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It is what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy. So the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations, these are what I have come to believe, the pure, magical moments, our souls awakening from sleep. So I'm going to read 5 poems, and I know it might seem weird for some people in the audience that some of us are doing longer, but that was sort of the way it is. So each of my poems is going to take a different spin on joy. So the first one, to pick up on one of the themes, other than joy, Virginia Woolf. And right on cue, here is Virginia Woolf. Hi, baby. I knew she'd be here. So my first one is inspired by Virginia Woolf's diary entries of November the 11th and the 12th, 1918, while she's in her home in Richmond. And true to her fashion, she records her feelings for the day, the time, the occasion, which of course is the end of the Great War. Her keen eye for details and sensuality, as well as her ability to see into the meaning of things, reminds us how deep sometimes we must dig for joy and find it in the most unexpected of places. So this one is called Seasons to Moth. We should be satisfied with starlings diving into pocked skies, threading through, wheeling, as if one could stuff clouds black with sorrow, grief mourned, and yet a promise smokes. Peace isn't well wishes or bells ringing the Sabbath, the noisy flutter of a rippling flag, a siren's mad sigh, nothing more to say than what's been said. Crowds cheer, starlings write lists, casualties, my dabbling nib. Everything is as it ought to be. Then a sputter of guns, raining feathers, no, leaves, wings, maple keys spin, real seasons to moth, golden, ruby, rooks. Fragile beauty performs, gives thanks, valediction over the grave. The dead speak and the living call my name, victory, not Virginia. An old man toddles his mongrel dog, his star bag bursting now with bread. It's enough to quiet the drowning, to hush neither jubilant nor joyful hooting, to droop splashing waves, starlings, restless again, darn heaven's hollows, prick, prick, as if closing the abyss could mend the world. I lived in a old Victorian home when I'm in Belleville, and sometimes just being here helps me through the transitions of seasons, time, realities. And looking through these enormous bay windows as I am now, I read the land differently. I feel the energy differently. Life that was, life that is now, and life what it wants to be. So not long ago, morning after one of our early spring snowstorms, somewhere between the state of dream and wake, I felt a sense of yearning. And it wasn't necessarily my own yearning, but a universal craving of all things, what we might call joy. There seemed to be signs of it everywhere. The world was a symphony, and I had only to hear it, to write it down. So this one was called For Honey. Last night, the world turned salt. Morning, peppered by swaggering crows, shade upon ebony, the sun a sleek white shadow. Birds call each to the other, and snow, sparkling, mute, hunches half a house high, birthing this brilliant Sunday. The week arrives, dragging its ragged ends, rolls its saline drifts. Memory steeps in brine. Did I light a lamp? Draw curtains to see if streets were thick with night and wind? Evening air threads mirth, as if I were needle and I were shroud or patient inject its joy, breathing, not breathing for a moment, but nestled, silly, float on beak and feather midnight's soft, wide wings. Morning finds two snowbears petrified, their gaze fixed to the dull reel of parking lots, spinning wheels that spit false teeth. Snowbears, their mouths agape, are hungry, starved for sweetness, for honey. Hope's faith bursts, and I arrive feet first, not feet at all, but strings pulled, flopped upon a mattress, fringed by sleep slumber, sunbathed, drip by constant drip, until awake, I am spring and its stubborn heart, its tacky heart, retaining symphonies unseen. A thin voice wavers, reaches its top note, buzzes, sticky to join the crow's clatter, and the bear's quiet craving for honey. And the next one, because it's spring, there must be a love poem. And love poems usually are about joy. Sometimes this joy gets lost in the ego, and its obtainment becomes a struggle. becomes a battle against myth, becomes a battle in Paradise Lost, a struggle for joy's self-preservation. So this one's called 1,000 Nights and Day-Long Dribble. I shot the moon's eye and thought of you. That didn't last long, only I shot again, then again, lifting my face to its perfect brilliance, and feigning I was Venus, got close enough for one more blow. Bruises, open wounds, Swiss cheese kisses, copious amounts of wine. The gods were with us then, swishing bitter tannins, spinning drunken tales, corked and glorious, magnificent beginnings, egg-shelled days, sodden nights. Lukewarm rain brought no relief. Bad seeds, felled apples. I was worm and ate with avarice, flesh to core, then through pith to lonely. The deed done, only Helen thanked me. She knew beauty's blemish pines in sorrow. I shot the moon's eye, your eye, gazed at subject and object, both stared back. Dante, Milton, 1,000 Arabian nights and day-long dribble. Slanting seasons ripen a peach. Bliss is brief. I've slung red as Morgan's cloak and heard the banshees buzzing at my door. Death be damned. I know enough about retribution to draw a line under it and forget it. A few years ago, I left my position as a creative writing instructor at the college and university to teach young children. So today I spend much of my time with young kids. And many of them I notice are still suffering from some of the damage of the pandemic. They're lonely, they're very uncertain of themselves. They're still very isolated, and they lack, of course, social skills. But they are very driven by a certain urgency, a certain need for their own sense of self-happiness, joyfulness, or if you want to say soul fulfillment. That's a hard thing to say, soul fulfillment. In the last few years, I've also become my mother's caregiver. So from and with her, I've learned to appreciate and to celebrate the smaller moments of joy. So this poem that I'm going to read, it's a celebration of and a search for, a lifelong search for joy from childhood to adulthood to old age. And it goes something like this. It's called You'll Forgive Me. You'll forgive me if I don't open the door. Strangeness is about. I saw a boy shake himself free of wind, only 5, and he cursed like the devil's own and whacked each gust with his tiny fist, shrieking along the stony curb, unable to beat spring's churlish squall. Seasons blur, time curls into its own shell. No use sweeping this skin, it swells joints like knees, they won't bend, hands, crab claws, can't grab the knob, unchain the latch, locked in, hopeless. Pardon the redness, squinting through holes isn't easy on the eye. Wood wears edges thin, splinters swim under the door and drown in triteness. My arms fill. Excuses, fragrant as the yellow roses he brings and pricks his thumb. Mangoes ripen to a glorious orange. Sun-kissed, succulent, their juice courses my lips, my chin. Heedless of the weather, I throw pits. Months pass, and still the green man twists his leaves, embraces the house, but barren, offers no fruit. Strangely, I do not miss it. And I'm going to finish on a very short one that is perhaps more traditional. This too was inspired by a child, the early morning on Robin Lake. And I was reminded of Wordsworth's belief that the child is the father of the man. This is called She Came, a Breath. She came, a breath, greening the grass wild, leaf stars shining. She came. Unlike Lawrence tugging his bed cap, watching his nose grow thin, or Lincoln, his face splitting past and present days, pale, quivering, knows his own death. Catherine, oblivious to a rain of bullets, sits contently on her throne. Beckoning the sea, Shelley asks, "How long do you mean to be content?" Her arms, sun pale and honey, wave, tree leaf, starshine, ribbons of light. Her chamomile hair unlaces sky, shortens the distance. Where geese step gently into the lake, slide across a perfect morning, and wither from bird to dot. She came then, a breath, a universe of bliss, gilded light, summer ripe, like that, the girl gone. All right, thank you for listening to all 5 of my poems. Then our next poet I want to introduce. Give it up for Mary Lou. She'll give you a different sense of joy, I'm sure.
Yes. So thank you so much, Kath. It's really a challenge to read after you with all that beautiful work, but I'm delighted that that's where I fell in the sequence of events. Good afternoon to everybody. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces. And especially special appreciation to John for all the organizing, and kudos to all the members of the Long Dash group. It's lovely to read with you today. Now, as Kath and everybody who has read before me has said, joy is a really challenging topic to try and find poems in your work. And I realized going over everything that life has really offered me much joy in different contexts and places. So today I'll read poems that speak to some of these places and the joys they evoke. And I'll start with the poem Serendipities. It's from Dark Water Songs, and it speaks to joys close at home. Serendipities. Close to home, even a casual walk can yield surprises, chance sightings that tug and probe associations, green falls of willow tinged in gold that break your stride, flow of leaves beyond the pines, cascading silence, hint of sage and ash in morning's slanted light. No wrong moves for warm drops of sepia deepening the base of stalks, those unintended shadings. Squeeze a loaded brush, something's bound to fall between the russet and the blue. All illumination in the end, a golden clarity against the grain, revealing the wonderment of wet. So from Toronto, we move to the Niagara Escarpment and the poem entitled Bed and Breakfast. It speaks to the joys of contentment and order and love. Bed and breakfast. On the edge of the escarpment, everything knows its place, the horizon just beyond reach, ribbons of corn unfurling like prayer shawls, tassels gold and silent. No surprises between the rows, vigilant spaces, coherent, defined. Strips of new plowed earth fringe the field, crisp grass-trimmed borders. Here is certitude, rural symmetry. The vineyard loft overlooks 2 cities and the lake. Grape-bearing vines in measured lines straddle the land. A regiment of trees in formation, standing at ease. A rightly landscape with our continental breakfast. Just one poem, your raspberry muffins, my warm bagels, and cream cheese. This next poem, Jazz on the Rocks, is from Traveling Light, and it moves over to the West Coast. It began in a lounge in Vancouver. I was sipping a glass of port and listening to jazz. I had done a reading earlier that evening and was definitely mellow. Jazz on the Rocks. As cities slip mutely into night to the mournful cry of gulls, even in sleep she turns towards the sea. Moons surfacing as islands, taking shape like coral, layer on layer. Awake at dawn as needles of light pierce the bay. Below her high-rise window, a chorus of gulls tests morning wings, and mountains like Aphrodite, fully formed, announce their presence rising through the mist. An eloquent energy breathes through the sea, marbling currents, sunlit tones riffling the blues. Here, sunset lingers like a lover lightly on the body, silent as the scent of salt tracing silver. While Robson Street nights sip jazz on the rocks, licorice and black currant, their shadows on the palette warming deep like a 20-year-old port, an English Bay moon savoring the sea. Now this next poem takes us east across the Atlantic and to Scotland. It's entitled From Perth to Edinburgh by Rail. It speaks to the joys of traveling by rail, the closeness of nature, and rivers that meet the sea. From Perth to Edinburgh by rail. So close, the rush of brush and brick, wild trees that bend the wind, eclipsing sky. Geldings graze tufts of shuffled green, fields shorn golden. Low hills, then everywhere water, the firth in slanting sheets of rain, river's mouth burnt umber. Heaving seas beyond the cantilevered bridge. Tonight at dinner, in twilight's careful rationing, a slender crystal vase where 2 carnations and a solitary rose partially unfurl. And moving south to Dorset and Bournemouth, I'll read View from the Miramar Hotel. This is a really beautiful old hotel in Bournemouth, and it's sort of settled right on the top of the cliffs overlooking the sea. View from the Miramar Hotel. Lime green gardens below my window, an almost leafless tree veined coral dark, and then the sea its ragged canvas glazed meridian. One small sailboat angles into wind, a circling hawk and herring gulls' black wingtips skirting waves. In the distance, barely visible, the coastline, Isle of Wight to Purbeck Hills. Tomorrow, a scattering of still grey cloud remembering night's wait, pewter sea brushed indigo, wet on wet. To the east, a splash of rose. Across the channel, arcing skies, the brashly winding, fearless Grand Corniche. All restless loops, elegant geometries, conjuring our wordless, wine-dark swells. This next poem includes an epigraph by Colin Tobeam. To name a loss would be to lose it further. The poem is entitled In Morning's Light. It was written in Jamaica, and it blends both joy and sadness. In morning's light, sunlight tracks along the ceiling, stitched into its white, proclaims morning through the shutters, shadows precise as railway ties, silent sculptured space, clear as sunrise. A warbler's yellow-throated song, morning's edge, space she could slip into, where gardens' ivied walls arch secular yet cloistered, and ginger lilies press grills oblivious to breath or word, all that could be spoken. Wild bananas, green exuberance, heliconia, pendulous, spiraling, one lone desert rose, bent in broken clay. And I'll close with the poem entitled Against All Odds. It's a love poem, brings us back to Toronto and home. Against all odds. We've shared 12,000 days and more, weathered ice storms, power failures, several cats, renegotiated mortgages and joy, love's fierce trajectories, equal parts laughter, sadness, subtle alchemies. Lately, I've been dreaming grassy pools, moist sand, birds the colors of crushed coral, fragile, thin-boned, soft, perhaps a snowy egret, plovers or sandpipers rumpled white, no sense of why. They seemed deliberate, induced perhaps by cinnamon, lemon or stevia shaken well, 3 sprays under the tongue, the murmur of nuns, poems, promises, and paths. While all I ask are breath and you, to find my way through fog and wilderness, a stone to walk on water lightly. Thanks so much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Merle Nudelman, my friend and fellow Long Dash poet. Over to you, Merle.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou. That was beautiful. Good afternoon, everyone, and wonderful to be amongst my talented colleagues. A special afternoon of beautiful poetry. The poems and I would like to thank John Oughton for all his efforts, and Mary Lou and Brenda as well for their contributions to this afternoon. The poems I've chosen to read today are from my new book, Michael and Me, which is being launched this year by Ecstasis Editions. These poems that I've chosen speak to the joy that comes from nature, from love, and from spiritual connection. The first piece I've selected is set in the autumnal botanical gardens at UBC in Vancouver. And the piece is called Green Heart. Soaring poplars surround us. I listen to landscape, touch the wren's call, unhurried in the garden. Hydrangea clusters billow, solitary planets on stalks, a galaxy in blooms, bunched glory pink. The path meanders beyond ruddy maples, weeping willows. It wanders the verdant mystery we unscroll as we study the climbing vines. Search for the canopy, sun's emerald lucidity. The next piece I'm reading to you is dedicated to my daughter-in-law, Lisa, and it is a love poem to her from my son, Michael, and it is entitled Ode to a Wife for Lisa. Resplendent beauty, you knew he was yours the moment you opened the front door, beheld Michael in chandelier glow, sensed his husbandly virtues. Oh, how he rejoiced in your blissful abandon, dimpled smiles. Mightily pregnant, you bound upstairs, bearing caresses, comfort's voice, a gleaming lamp and constant. Sabbath bride, you nourish, create a shimmery space, fill him with green, the grit to survive and thrive in the candlelit days. Soul's beacon, you are unflinching, a bronze warrior, his champion, waving the banner, proclaiming his skill, his will to be. Now and forever, Raven, you are love undying, his predestined one. Now we will travel together north of Toronto to cottage country and the natural beauty of central Ontario, which for me is a source of profound and never-ending joy. This piece is entitled Walking with the Great Blue. Heron stands on the dock, studies the lake, islands, forested shores. Up, down, up he bogs as waves lift grayed planks shaped by summers. He turns, ponders the slip shoreline, fern fronds reflecting rings on water as he steps onto the grassy yard. Silent, I sit behind porch screen. Heron takes my measure, strolls long-legged beside a trio of chairs, rugged pines, lemony daylilies nodding. Inspecting foliage and rocks, he ruminates on the way it is buzzed, places webbed feet gingerly, pauses when a motorboat speeds into the bay. Near the boathouse, he halts, peers inside, skis, sails, Michael touched. There, sunlit faces linger in memories of time left behind. Neck bends, beak strokes feathers frayed on his chest. At dock's edge, he finds water, the neighbor's land, before rounding the corner, easing forward, and with quiet grace, leaps and is gone. We move now to the mystical and spiritual. There are a number of spiritual poems in Michael and Me, and I've selected one of my favorites from that collection. This particular piece is a ghazal, which is a type of poem constructed with couplets and repeated words as well as rhyming words. And this poem is called The Portal. It's true, Michael did share ethereal perception, thread by luminous thread, wisps of wisdom. Mystery was unpacked, placed in my palms, a crystal ball awaiting wisps of wisdom. I pulled the pieces to my heart, presented them to night's baffled sky, wisps of wisdom. Energy blown from above, infused dance, drum, sea grasses scattering wisps of wisdom. I rolled vibration from throat to belly's hum, down legs to land's core, to wisps of wisdom. Third eye revealed the wondrous cosmos, ancestral links to earthly wisps of wisdom. Detached from glitter, quagmire, and pomp, I stride on tightrope, floating wisps of wisdom. I come back to the theme of love, which in my view is the most profound and wondrous source of joy, with this next piece entitled Flowing. Love, a short word, simple in fact, yet containing the entire world in the spaces between its four letters. In rhyme and meter, poets glorified l'amour. The bard of Avon dramatized passion. Rumi sanctified love. The Bible codified it. Love is the breath of the universe. It's what holds matter together, makes sunsets soothing, symphonies sustaining, the essential emotion that ennobles the species. My devotion is, was, and always will be. I'm no longer matter. I am love. We now return with this next piece to Central Ontario and its peaceful beauty, its stillness where nature speaks and inspires, if only we listen. The angel hour. Resisting the impulse to blink into the dark, startle at the faint glimmer, my unspoken words loop songs and prayers for the ethereal, the creatures beyond shuttered windows. Blessed thou art, sing in my veins, atop the waves, gentling the shore, bereft with night's uncertainty. A passing boat rouses the loons. One calls to the night, another to morning's margins. Braided they chant to wind and water, to the endless, echoing firmament. I will end my reading this afternoon in the Ontario North. Its bounty of natural wonders and awe, always a source of joy. This piece is for my grandson, Jeremy, and is entitled Guardians of Earth, and captures an experience Jeremy and I share. We follow the blue threading north, out of the city, its static and stench, scout the day, burnished peony, replacing doubt. Clarity lights the open road, bricks and cement turn into loamy furrows, shooting verdant along the Holland marsh. Distance pushes us past touristy stops in Barrie. Urgency pulls us towards the granite shield, her silky lakes. Tranquility spreads benignly. The navy ribbon twists through rocky hills, and we talk about what was and is, what thrills as miles come and go, as each minute fills until our gaze lifts upward to the red-tailed hawks circling the blue. Some surveilling birds and visions, others scaling sky, and oh, we've counted 10. Where we're going, where we've been. Guardians of an earth asunder, they urge, reclaim perspective, sense seers. Sun slips behind the hills, sky pinks, burns, streams turquoise. Along the island road, a deer darts beyond our car, pauses at the edge of the wood. In his gaze, the mantle of race. Ears alert, he scans us, hunched in the car, assessing likelihoods. Would he leap and lose himself in forest shade, be swallowed by time? Rooted, he weighs the tumbled seconds, joy and awe cascading. Ignition on, we inch ahead while he stays, sniffs the air, attends to the tires graze. Deep drawling blues murmur as we praise. I thank you for your attention, and it's my pleasure to introduce the next reader, my colleague, Sheila Stewart.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me okay? This is really quite a lovely afternoon, and just a big thank you to everyone for being here. The weather gods are with us, at least in Toronto, because it's kind of miserable out there, and a good Zoom and cups of tea kind of afternoon. It's also a real pleasure to be reading with my fellow Long Dash poets. Some of these poems we've workshopped on a Wednesday evening, and some we've, debated and kept making various changes to or suggestions. So it's interesting to hear how they land. And a big thank you to John for lots of organizing of us all, and also to Brenda and Mary Lou and my fellow poets. And I'm beginning with a poem with the title Sky Blue Sky. It's as if Merle and I were chatting about what to do. It also harkens back to Clara's cat with the blue eyes, the cat called Blue, and takes us in a few different directions. Sky blue sky, ink, chair, tablecloth, checkered white, and pale walls, so far from royal, dusty blue. Mum loved royalty, delighted her son was born the same day as Prince Charles, aligned stars, named him Charles. Dad believed the island should be one, Ireland, undivided, surrounded by sea. Scrap of willow china blue fits the hollow of my palm. Lapis lazuli earrings, Chilean, near night. Circle of blue on my father's lower lip. My lips after learning to swim in Stratford, reading by flashlight. Blue dress lit with white winged turns. And my second poem is called Bring All Your Songs. Bring all your songs that I may cradle them, fold them in the finest old damask, a washed and rewashed tablecloth, small wine stain, worn candle wax. Call it, if you will, Irish linen, though some weavers were Huguenot. Brown linen and white sold at the Lisburn market. Use the old word, Lisnagarvey. Yes, Lisnagarvey. It's been an interesting time thinking over this theme of joy. And that first poem with the blue is just sometimes just these colors are what brings us joy. And, you know, even if you're in a kind of unjoyful mood, sometimes you can look around and just start to see some colors, your eyes light on something, a color or a texture that is a pleasure. And for me, another joy is just the sound of words, and in particular, the sounds of old Irish place names, like that one, Lisnagarvey. So this is the final poem I'm going to read, and it's for a particular new life, a grandchild. For those of you who know my work, I write a lot about family, and you know, had to have a couple of my family members in one of the poems today, and now there's a new person to inspire my work when not with her. And it starts with a line of Leonard Cohen's. Dance me to the children who are asking to be born. Her small weight sleeps on my chest, on my beloved's. We whisper over this new life. Her breath, shorter than ours. Oh, she sneezes, full-bodied, doesn't open her eyes, arms heavy. We gaze at her photograph, scroll, greedy for more. Her image private, family, blood, close friends, her face, her own. She sleeps best held, her sounds our own, sounding joy. So that is our poetry reading. I'm going to turn to John now, because there's a little bit of time for any questions and comments that people would like to make. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank everyone who's read. And also, we really appreciate the participants who showed up. We hit a high point of 31, which is a prime number, and a goodly amount of people that hang out and listen to poetry on a Sunday afternoon. So if you want to, lots of you have been commenting in the chat, and we really appreciate what you're saying and your response to it. But if you want to ask a question or state something orally, just unmute your mic and we can go at it. I'm going to pause the recording, so what'll happen after this won't be on the version on YouTube.